Well, it's a nice morning in Marathon. I was just out with my wife. I took out the motorcycle, went for a little ride, had a coffee and a bagel at the local donut shop, and back into the shop. So this is going to be kind of an interesting day. We're going to be doing the electronic wiring on this Les Paul series of a rebuild that we're doing. So it's going to be an interesting one. I'm going to take you over here and just kind of show you the setup, and so just stay tuned. Be right back. Well, guitar enthusiasts, before we get started on this electronics, let's just take a little look at what we got going here. So what I have here, I've got the pots all laid out. There they are. And I've got the washers laid out as well. They go with those pots, so no problem with that. Then I've got pulled out the original pickups sitting back there, so they're set to be installed, no problem. And down in here, what have I got? I've got the plate, and I've got the little resistors, the bleed resistors. I've got the three-way switch sitting. I've got the jack, new jack, and I've got the new chrome plate for the jack I'm going to be using. And then I'm going to have to decide on what am I going to put on for the top hats. And we call these guys here, we call these top hats because they look like a top hat. And these are the control ends that go on top of the pots. So for example, it would slide on and fit on top of this. And we're going to take a look and figure out what we're going to use. And you know, I'm really looking at all my pots here. I'm leaning towards these guys here with the silver heads on it, silver fronts on them. So we've got two tones. And we got, here they are, we got a couple volumes. Move them over there. Yeah, a couple volumes involved. So, yeah. I'm thinking that with the silver heads there, the tops there, I'm thinking when I'm looking at this guitar, and I'm looking at the whole guitar now done in the black, and kind of this burst. You can see the silver burst coming through here, eh? And then also with the machine heads in chrome, you know, the new Grovers, and you take a look on the back of the machine heads in chrome as well. I'm thinking that those guys there are going to be the best match for this guitar. So that's what we're going to go with, and we're going to start off by putting these guys in, and I'll be setting this up on a holder so you can see. I'm not going to bore you with putting all four of them in and doing everything, but I'll do a video on putting you know, putting one or two of these guys in here, setting them up correctly for the right distance and whatnot, and then you'll know if you see the one go in, you'll know that the other three or four, whatever I'm doing, is going to be the same. And I'll follow that kind of through the video rather than, you know, spending an hour and a half video on putting these tuners and top hats on. I'll reduce it a bit, show one at a time, you know, the one going in and installing, and then I'll jump until they're all done. And then we'll flip it over. And at that point, we're going to go through the solder job that we have to do to get everything running and working on the electronics. So with that, all the parts laid out, and the guitar set to go, and next thing is get out that soldering iron and start putting in these pots. So that's the next little episode. We'll see you shortly. Just one thing I wanted to cover with everybody before I start putting the electronics into this Les Paul body. You'll notice what I've done, and you can buy this copper metal tape. It's basically got a paper backing that you peel off, and it's sticky on one side and shiny on the other. It's a metal-based tape, and what you do is you line your cavities with this. So you can see before I put the electronics in here in the pots, I've got this totally lined. And then also up here where the switch is going to go, I've got that totally lined with the same type of copper tape. And the whole idea being is that with this this grounded out, then what you also do is you take your lids, your covers, and you put the same copper on them. So up here you can see I've got it covered. All right. And notice how I got this little edge overhang coming around here. So when this is grounded out, when I screw this on top, then that little edge makes contact with the edge of this, and it also grounds out this. So what you've got when you've done that is you've really got a complete grounded shield, if you will, around any of the main electronics that's inside this guitar body. And if there's any noise that's going to be happening because of that electronics that's in this guitar, this is virtually going to shield it and kill that happening. So sometimes you might end up with a ground hum, and you check your ground wire that's going to your bridge, and it's good, and you've got your jack grounded, but you still got a little hum that's happening on your guitar, and you wonder why. Pretty good chance it's because the shielding in here is not good, or there is none at all. Some guitar manufacturers, they spray in a little thin coat of metal-based kind of paint, but that doesn't serve the purpose of what I'm doing with a complete shielding right within the cavities itself like this. So just a little tip, that's what I do, and I do that before I start putting in the electronics. So over and out. This is kind of the setup we've got ready to start the wiring of this Les Paul. I showed you this in the other video, but anyways, you can see the pots are all installed and ready to go. I've got the cavity lined with copper, and I've got the switch kind of stuck in there, not really screwed in tight, but lined with copper as well. So this is kind of the position on the workbench that I'm going to be working with to do the wiring. And you know, I'll be putting this up on the Skycam hopefully so you can see the wiring in progress. But before we get into that, I'm just going to show you the way I set things up. I use my own wiring diagrams. I've got a set here, and what I've got is basically the first one shows the, I do it in phases. So this basically shows the ground wiring, and you can see on the left hand side, top left, you can see the neck pickup, and then the switch in the middle on the left, and then the bridge pickup at the bottom. You got the four pots. You got the two volume pots on the left. You got the two tone pots on the right, and you can see down here you've got the you know, in this area here, that's where the jack goes in for your amp on your guitar jack. So this is kind of how I set up my wiring. I put the ground wiring in first, and then the next thing I do is I wire my pickups. That's phase 2. Then phase 3, I wire the switch wiring in, and 4, I ground the lugs of the tone pods, and the very last thing I do is I put in the resistors for the tone control on each volume pod. Then of course I've got, you know, the Gibson specs, what kind of pickup are you using, blah blah blah. I've got the wiring diagram of the three-way switch that I'm using, and over here I've got the pickups sitting here ready to go in. You can see these are the four wire series of Gibson pickups with the ground wire. So we'll be using that schematics on that for wiring these pickups in. So that kind of gives you an idea of the way I set it up before I start wiring. The other thing that I do, and I guess it depends on everybody has a different approach, but you know, when you buy the wiring and harnesses and whatnot, you get these little wires, you know, as far as your wiring in your internal wiring inside the cavity here. I usually go with a far heavier gauge of wire. I put in a really good solid wire, bigger conductors, solid ground sheath on the cable. It also has an internal ground wire. You know, it's just personal preference, I guess. The wiring I use have 4 conductors in it. Whereas the wiring you usually get with a setup like this, and you buy it from, like, you know, it usually comes with wire with only one conductor in it. So I usually wire this thing up with 4 conductors. I don't use them all for the setup I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be using a vintage wiring setup for this that you'll see me do. But if I ever decide, for example, to pull a pot out and I want to do a push-pull pot, all of a sudden I need more than a pair of wires. So as a result, when I'm wiring up a guitar brand new, I always use a 4-conductor wire going in. That way, if I ever want to make changes after the fact, the spare wiring is already in the cavities for me to use. So just a little tip, you can do what you want, but that's how I do it. So I'm going to let this go now, say goodbye on this little picture here, and the next thing you're going to see is up on the Skycam, and we're going to be doing the first phase of the wiring, which is going to be putting in the ground wiring. Over and out. Well, hopefully you can see this okay. I've got the Skycam kind of on an angle here. But anyway, got this set up. You can see what I've done. I'm going to be soldering in this cavity. And I've made sure that I've covered this guitar and taped these protective claws on top. And it's just to make sure that, you know, you don't drop something, and or it could be maybe you know, a little drop of solder fall, you know, accidentally and hit the wood and put a little pothole in it. So that's why we take these precautions. Put a little tape so it can't move around. It's on there really solid. And I got my wiring diagram here for the ground. And then what I did is, I'll just show you, I pre-prepped a wire here. Obviously, ground, I'm using a green wire, so all my grounds are going to be done in this green wire. And I'm going to be going from basically from this pot to this pot to this pot, and then the very end of it is going to go to the jack, the amp jack. So you can see what I do to prep this wire. I strip the end. I do take a little off where it's going to hit the first pot, and then a little bit more where it's going to hit this other one here, and then this end is going to go to the jack. So I pre-prep the wire, kind of like this, so that it makes it easy for me. So we're going to put that paper out of the way, and all we're going to do is we're going to drop a little solder on this pot right here, and you're going to see that happen. I can just hopefully just put this here. This is where it always gets to be funny, where you try to get the wiring in here to drop. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to lift that little ground wire up a little bit. I'm going to put that wire underneath, just like that. And let's see what we can do here. See what damage we can wreak today on this thing. So we're going to go for our first connection. And going to heat up the gun. This gun is a pretty good gun. It takes maybe, I don't know, 15-20 seconds to heat up. So that's going to drop solder on that pot. So we're just about ready to go, I think. Yeah, you can see there how that's going to be going. Going to go good. And we're just going to touch that on there. Hold that for a minute. Drop that solder on there. And that looks like I almost got it. Gotta put a little bit more, just a little bit more. And that's good. So we got that one done. Just gonna heat it up to make sure it's nice and neat. One connection done. It dries real quick. We're going to put the second one on now. Drop the second little bit of solder on this connection here, hopefully. I'm going to try to get these up out of the way, kind of, so they're not in the road, like that. Leave a little slack, you know, you leave a little slack. This is always the tricky part, is getting this wire to lay flat on that pot and the right position, because you're kind of working down below. That's why some people like to maybe do the solder work outside of the cavity, because you get into something like this where that wire for some reason don't want to sit down on there. But I'm going to use my my little needle nose here as a little holder, so I make sure I position that that in the right spot. Doesn't want to go no matter what I do. There it is. And I'm going to drop a little solder on that guy. Heat it up again. Make sure it's hot enough. It is. Drop a little solder on there. Just like that. That's on there good. Okay, and then we go to the third one. Ground wire is going to go on the third pot over here. Going to do the same thing. A little bit of slack wire. Now you see what I'm doing? I can use what I find to hold this thing is if I have like you know, needle nose or a little I don't know, snub nose or what do you want to call it. I just sit that over top of the wire, and what that does, that hold the wire in the right spot on that pot for me to put this, drop the solder. So this is kind of a cheat way of doing it, I guess, but this works for me. And I'm just gonna make sure this heats up, and I'm gonna drop some solder on this little one here. Of course, it fall over. Just like that, doesn't want to go. That happens sometimes. Wants to do that. You just touch it the wrong way, and the thing decides it's going to fall over on you. But that's okay. Get it lined up there correctly, hopefully. For some reason, that one doesn't want to go. It just says, I'm going to slide all over. I go everywhere but where you want it to go. Get in there, you. Get in there. There it goes. There's where I want it. Get it lined up. Drop it on. Let it heat up again good. Just like that. And that's done. So I've got the wiring done, the ground wire done. And this is the ground wire that's actually going to end up going through this hole here, and it's going to come out. It's going to be, I'll stick it out there right now. It's actually going to come out the hole, and it's going to be soldered to the jack that we're going to be installing later. So let's just see if we can get that out through the hole so that wire's out of the way. Just like that. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to take this webcam and stop it, and I'm going to give you a close-up to show you what that grounding wire looks like so far. So hold on. Well, it was pretty hard to show this in the Skycam because my hands were in the way, so it's hard to take a picture or video of it. So what I ended up doing, I just screwed back in the neck and the bridge pickups on this Les Paul, and there was a channel here that the wires from the pickups go down. I'll turn the thing over here. You'll see what I'm talking about. Hopefully I'll turn the thing over if I have a hand to work with. There we go. And what I have in the back now is I've got the wires from the pickups coming through the channel here, and they're obviously going to be soldered onto the pods. You'll notice that one's a little longer, so I know where it goes anyways, but you'll notice I marked these. So, you know, I've got B for bridge, and I've got N on this one I've actually put F for front, N for neck. So, you know, I know this is the neck pickup, and I know this is the bridge pickup. I marked them there before I pull them through. Because, yes, easy mistake. I see guys do a soldering job, get it all done, and find out they got them backwards. Wrong way around. So for the time it takes to put a little tape, put a little magic marker and put N for neck and B for bridge, pass them to the channel, there's no mistake. They're marked for me, and no problem moving forward. So I'll go ahead and solder them in, and then I'll show you the solder job after that's done. Over and out. Well, just a little status update. I've been pulling the wires through, so I got the wire pulled through the cavity here for the switch. I got the other end for the switch coming out here. This is a ground wire that I'm gonna ground to that copper siding to make sure that the inner copper shielding is properly grounded. And up here, I'm going to be doing the same thing. That ground wire is going to be grounded with a screw to this copper. Make sure that shielding is grounded. So basically, you can see what's going on here. I got the pots all done. The ground wires are in. I've soldered the pickups on, and I'm just doing the switch now. So I'd like to show you this, but you know, I'm trying to figure out some way to get this cam so that you can see what's going on. And I'm working right overhead of this darn cavity, so it's really hard to take a video showing what I'm doing because my head and hands are in the way, so it's almost impossible. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and I'll do the soldering and whatnot, and then I'll show you the final product. I'm not sure how I could set this up to get a good view. Could put it on an angle over here, but you really can't see what I'm doing like that, so that's no good either. So anyways, I'll go ahead, I'll solder it in, and then I'll show you what I've done, and you'll get a look at the end result. Over and out. Well, I finished up all the soldering. Sorry I couldn't show you that solder in progress because there's just, like I say, I tried this bloody cam in 2 or 3 positions, and when I put it up above on the sky, it was so far away you couldn't see nothing. And if I put it directly over top like this, my hands and soldering iron head was in the way, so you couldn't really see much. But to make a long story short, you can see what it looks like with the switch has now been installed and soldered. You can see that here I've got the pots installed, and everything has been soldered in. And you can see, just point out here, you can see right here is the where I've grounded this sheath. So there's ground continuity going right through everything. And in fact, if you go up here, you'll see I did the same thing here. There's a grounding lug there to ground this copper sheath or shield, if you will. So I got a pretty good feeling that there won't be much sound coming out of this guy because she's grounded pretty good. So I'm going to put these plates back on top, and then we're going to give it a test. So just bear with me. I'll be back in a moment. Well, it's got everything pretty well back together. Haven't got the strings on or the bridge, but I think now it's going to be the time to see. I put the jack on. You see here, nice chrome jack went on. The back plates are on. Looks really nice. Pickups are all wired in. But now it's time to see what happens. Turn on the amp, and let's take a look. Switch is nice. That's a nice switch. So let's see. I go up top here. Let's see if we got the front pickups live. No. Oh, well, it might help if I turn the volume up, eh? Scare myself. Good. Back's dead. Front's alive. Back. Front should be dead. Good. Front. Good. Both. Pretty nice. Bridge. Neck. Both. So, just checking the tone pods. Yeah, they're working too. So success. We've got the wiring done. I'm happy to see that. And everything grounded out beautifully. So with that, I guess I'll leave this video. This will be ending this video with the wiring finished. And I guess the next video is going to be coming up. We're going to be putting the bridge back on. We're going to be stringing up the guitar. Yeah, I'm going to be stringing it up. Going to be doing a setup. Going to have to do the intonation on the on the neck, you know, to make sure that we've got the right intonation, that we're not sharp or flat on the strings. And we also have to do the relief. Probably going to set it up for 10/1000ths of an inch to start off with. That's probably be low. I'll see how low I can get this with nice action. So so far it's been a success and it's looking good. So stay tuned. We have another video coming up, and we'll look at the like I say, the bridge and the restringing. We're going to soon be playing this son of a gun, eh? Over and out.